From Informa Tech Target, I'm David Essex, and this is Enterprise Apps Unpacked. For years, Infor has sought to differentiate itself by its industry-specific ERP, tailored to quite specific industries, not just for processes common to the entire food and beverage industry, for example, but special features for subsegments like dairy and baked goods. Some of that is the legacy from acquiring ERP brands like Mapix and Lawson that were favored by certain industries. But even since it rewrote much of its ERP code for software as a service deployment in its Cloud Suite product line, the company has kept up this industry focus. Now Infor claims to be doing the same with its agentic AI tailored to the specific needs of these micro-verticals. Today's podcast is devoted to a case study involving one of Infor's micro-vertical AI products, as told by the customer, a company called Turtle, one of the biggest electrical distributors in the U.S. We're not talking about lamps, light bulbs, and switch covers you get at Home Depot. Turtle supplies and helps manage big infrastructure projects, like the power microgrid at New York's Hudson Yards, and implementing controllers for an emissions monitoring system for 12 energy facilities across 3 states. Turtle runs the Infor Cloud Suite distribution ERP system. It previously used a static model to price products based on item categories in customer segments, plus the personal judgment of salespeople. The result was that pricing was inconsistent sometimes for the same customer, and it wasn't flexible enough to adjust quickly to changes in things like the cost of commodities, such as copper and aluminum. Turtle had market data showing that it was underpricing some of its products. It first tried to automate the process with AI and an in-house data scientist, but soon turned to Infor's data science team, which built a dynamic pricing widget for the order entry screen in Cloud Suite distribution. Now salespeople get pricing recommendations and prepare quotes in seconds rather than, say, a half hour. The widget draws on real-time competitor data and commodity pricing, but also purchase history to spot opportunities to maximize profit. The widget brought a 1.3% increase in gross margin. It's also helping less experienced salespeople get up to speed quicker. Today's guest, David McGee, is the company's Chief Technology Officer. We discussed why optimal pricing is so important for distributors, what makes this tool intelligent through AI as opposed to just using advanced analytics, how much work went into developing it, who did the work, the biggest challenges, and lessons learned along the way. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Enterprise Apps Unpacked for the real story on the software that runs your business. David, thanks very much for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can you start by telling the listeners a little bit about your company and explaining just what Turtle does and who your customers are?
Yeah, so Turtle Hughes is a 103-year-old woman-owned distributor. We focus in the electrical industrial distribution space. We do a lot of work with electrical automation, also your traditional, pipe and wire type services for contractors. We sell generally to contractors, not to the end users. Majority it's contractors, whether it's large electrical contractors or large GCs or large construction firms. Like I said, we're unique in the sense that we're the 15th largest distributor in the United States. We are the largest woman-owned. We are a 4th generation woman-run organization, which when you consider the fact that we started in New York City in the 1920s as a woman-run organization, it's a tough place to crack open a business, and we're still here. And 5th generation leadership actually works for the company now, so we're looking to continue the tradition.
That is impressive. I didn't realize the woman-led ownership went back that far.
Yep,
different times back then.
Absolutely,
for sure. Yeah. So what are the kinds of business challenges that typically require the most attention from both your business and the IT leaders like you are? So before we get more into the specifics of this particular application, I'm wondering, what are the kinds of things maybe that keep you and the business people up at night?
Beyond the standard, cybersecurity, keeping everybody safe, right? That's kind of the top of the pile for everything. But a lot of it is, doing more. We are privately owned, so a lot of our technology investment is funded internally. So as we evaluate technologies and look at things, we've got to find home runs, right? So when we make large investments in technology, it's got to bring value. being self-funded, it puts a little bit more pressure to make sure we're picking the right technologies. We implement them timely, and we actually drive the value we expect out of it. So it's innovation. Then the second part of it is innovation. This industry distribution is not a tech. It's interesting, right? It's tech savvy in the sense that we sell a lot of technology. We sell a lot of solutions that are based upon high level technology, but our organizations aren't necessarily run with the same level of technologies. So it's very important for us as an organization to grow, to continue to, give our employees more power, more scale, but do more with less, leverage technology, increase margins, all of those efficiency gains from technology perspective.
So the particular application that your PR folks called my attention to is something from Infor, and it's some kind of AI driven pricing model.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the problem, or maybe the typical challenge that AI pricing model is addressing?
Yeah, I mean, so the sales-based organization distribution, right? So there's always this concept, and we try to avoid, the race to zero. Always selling less and selling less. Selling for less and selling for less, and driving the margins down. So work with Infor, we developed a model that helped us evaluate our pricing and what's a fair price to charge our customers based upon more than just a traditional, hey, I sold product A to customer A at 15% margin or 20% margin or 9% margin, depending on what the product is. We try to put some more intelligence behind it so that we're pricing fairly based upon more than just traditional price to the customer. And so we look at things like COMEX pricing. So a lot of the products we sell are, steel or petroleum based. Those markets have a direct, copper, those markets have a direct impact on cost of goods from a replacement perspective, holding costs at the warehousing level. So we start trying to bring in other factors that we're making more informed, better informed decisions and providing appropriate pricing recommendations to our sales folks when it comes to pricing out products towards our customer.
So I think you've explained pretty well, why this is important. One of the things that jumped out at me in the case study that I found on the Infor website is where it said that Turtle subscribed to Infor's data science team and then initiated an AI-driven pricing project, and it was a business-led agile methodology. Can you drill down a bit into that aspect? And I'm especially curious about what is it that the Infor team do, and who from Turtle was involved, and what did they have to do?
So it's a little bit, let's start let's go 2 years before we actually signed the agreement with Infor. We had tried to do some of this work ourselves internally. We had data scientists on staff. We had other firms that we had partnered with to try to help develop out this methodology and strategy. And the reality was we just weren't successful with it, right? Because the big challenge was integrating it within a tech stack, having it be native to the application, to the platform, presented to our sales folks in a way that wasn't intrusive. It wasn't another screen or another application. So we need that seamless integration, but we also needed people to understand the industry. So Infor has a platform called Augmented Intelligence. It's a subscription-based model. And the value from our perspective is they bring all of the development of the solution, right? Literally the coding and the development of the application. They also bring the data scientists to the conversation where we provide our data and they analyze it and assess it and tune the model according to our desired outcomes. So it really took the burden off of me of managing very expensive technical talent in terms of data scientists and AI development. I avoided the burden of offshore development or even onshore development in terms of having to write the application to integrate with the platform. So we bring our data, our business problems, and our desired outcomes, and then Infor brings everything else to the conversation. And over a very quick period of time, we went live with the what we call the pricing widget.
So this dynamic pricing widget, it's on an order entry screen, and I'm wondering, is that in the Infor distribution module, or the sort of distribution specific version of the Cloud Suite ERP? Is that where that lives?
Yes. So interesting enough, we launched it with our on-prem version. So the first version of the widget we built, and it worked with our on-prem version of the distribution product called SXE from Infor, and it's been written in a way that it's completely portable to the cloud version.
Interesting. Whenever I hear about on-premises and then there's AI, does that mean there's sort of some kind of extension, or there's something that links the on-premises to the cloud So because a lot of AI processing, as I understand it, has to go on
Mhm.
in the cloud. Is that how that more or less works?
Yeah, yeah. So Infor, it's a multi-tier application. So they have one of the components that make up the Infor ecosystem is called Infor OS. It's kind of their intelligent application stack that sits in the middle of all of these advanced technologies, whether it's your data in the data lake, whether it's the ERP functions, whether it's the higher level advanced technologies, AI-based functions. This Infor OS platform that's cloud hosted is the connective tissue between all of those cloud capabilities and my on-prem services.
So I'm curious to know who uses the widget and what does it actually do for them, especially compared to what they had or maybe didn't have before.
Sure. Um, Mostly it's our inside sales representatives. So, the way our organization is structured, we have, inside and outside sales. Our outside sales are generally customer facing. They're out, working with the customer every single day. But when you get into the order entry, the pricing, the majority of that is done by the inside sales teams. And so what they do is they go into the standard screens in the Infor platform that they're used to. And on the right hand side, a widget pops up and it shows them the recommended margin to sell that particular product at. And it shows there's a couple dials and levers in there that you can flip, but it shows them, hey, this is what it's been sold at before. Here's what the minimum margin should be. Here's what the maximum margin could be. So it does give them some flexibility. It's not so constrained that it's, hey, it needs to be this margin. They give them a range, a min and a max, and then a recommendation is obviously right in the middle. And then it brings other data into it. We scrape competitors' websites, and it'll show you what the open market price is. So as you're looking at evaluating the margin, that's a fair margin for the customer. You can also see what other competitors would potentially be charging the customer as well. So you get that competitive insight. And then the recommendation is based upon multiple factors, right? Historical purchases, COMEX pricing, inventory status, a bunch, a couple other variables that go into it to give us what we believe is the best margin, the fairest and most appropriate margin for that product. And what we're trying to do is eliminate the historical, I have a customer and I sell my customer at this margin. And what you'll find is sales folks are people of creatures of habit, and a lot of their margins land on zeros or fives, 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever the number is. And this really challenges that convention, right? So maybe we're not, it's not, hey, take 10% and make it a 20% margin. If 10%'s what you've been charging them, maybe 11.7, right? An arbitrary number is the right, most appropriate margin based upon all these other factors. So it's still a fair price to the customer. You're not just artificially inflating your numbers just to drive higher margin, but it's a more appropriate margin, and it's not a significant leap up in cost for the customer either.
There seems to be a gray area, at least, I'm a layman, but when I've heard about analytics and how like AI came along, there was already advanced analytics, and then I think AI has come along and often been added to analytics. How much of what the widget does is sort of the traditional analytics you wouldn't consider to be intelligent per se, and how much of it is kind of intelligent, where there's some machine learning and maybe even some training of the model so that it gets better over time?
Yeah, I mean, right now, in the current iterations, probably 60-40, where 40% is your traditional pricing analytics, right? What have you historically sold this product for to this customer or customers in this segment, or this particular product in this particular region, right? And those are just fixed. We all know, hey, in the Northeast, our corporate headquarters are in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, generally a more expensive market versus, say, our other regions in the Gulf Coast in Texas or Louisiana. See, so there's, market segmentation where products be more. So a lot of that is the analytics side of the house. We know in the Northeast product costs more, but where the AI kicks in, and why I say 60-40 is AI is where we're looking at, um, it's analytics, but it's analytics on steroids. It's a data set that's greater than any human's going to look at when you start comparing your pricing or your historical pricing. And then it's bringing in other factors. And I've said it a few times, COMEX pricing. We look at the commodities exchange and we look at cost of raw material like copper, and that helps us determine, is copper going up, is copper going down, what's our holding value of product, and should we sell it at, what should we sell it at because we have X amount of copper in stock, or hey, you know what, copper's really dipping, so we're going to sell it and hold on to what we have in inventory until the prices resume. And all that is where the AI kicks in and starts adding that higher level intelligence, and the algorithm starts learning our customers, our categories, like, hey, this customer's in this market segment. This is an electrical contractor, or this is an industrial contractor, or this is the petroleum industry, or this is the automotive industry. So it brings in a lot of those other factors that the human brain just can't look at, right? So we're good at creating 5, maybe 6 variables to consider when doing a pricing exercise, whereas AI takes you out to infinite amount of variables to consider when you're trying to determine what the right margin or the fair margin is for the customer.
So, do you have any hard numbers yet that prove that this AI pricing model is actually making a difference?
Yeah, yeah. So we've seen a pretty significant increase. I haven't updated the numbers in about 2 months, so to be a little fair, but when we launched it, we saw $700,000 in new revenue and about a $500,000 margin improvement across all sales. So it's been pretty impactful. And again, this is not jacking up prices. Some of the feedback I've gotten when I've been to a couple Infor events, I've had a couple people come up to me. So you're just charging more. No, that's an easy thing, right? Sales leader goes to salespeople and say everyone pays 5% more. No, that's not what we're doing, right? So it's finding the right price. And I mentioned it earlier. It's going from 10% to 11.2%. The goal here isn't to increase price to find that pain point where we start losing customers, right? We want to maintain our customer base. It's finding the fair margin and the right price for the customer and finding that spot. So, like I said, when you look at $700,000 in additional revenue, so we've been able to be more competitive in areas to generate more revenue, and then just a bottom line in 8 months of the product being alive, $500,000 in bottom line.
Seems pretty significant.
Yeah, it's working. We're very happy with it.
Yeah. So you've mentioned, the COMEX data and competitor pricing. Is the widget drawing from other things that are maybe internal, like Infor ERP? Is that where
Mhm.
presumably that's where your sales data is, and maybe
Correct.
there's some accounting and other financials?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pulling in customer historical sales, customer historical margin, or the category of the product. We know that a product in a certain category, the industry acceptable margin is X, but a different category. So you got a fastener versus a pipe, or wire versus a lug nut. They all are different categories. They have different appropriate margins. So it factors in all of that when it starts looking at, hey, here's what to recommend.
I understand you've expanded the AI modeling to inventory management. Can you talk about what you're doing there and what the results have been, if you've seen any already?
So it's been live for just about 2 weeks now. Right now, we're going through the recommendations from the new model. And really, the idea is, how do we get better inventory, right? So we want to drive rotations, right? So inventory turns on our higher velocity products, and then we also want to see, how we can reduce our slow moving stuff on our main distribution center. Over the first 2 weeks of running it, we've seen a small gain in efficiency on our E-ranked items, which is the slowest moving items. So we've been able to make determinations and take the slow moving inventory, make it available in other locations, price it more aggressively to get it out because it's inventory sitting on the shelves, it's not moving. So we've seen a decrease in our E rank in a few weeks already. Percentage wise, I don't have all the numbers for you. We'll have them most likely by the end of December. We get 2 months through the tool, and then we'll have some better numbers. But we are seeing again improvements in our slow moving, and then we want to continue to tune the model to increase velocity and turns on our higher ranked inventory items.
So the next product coming from Infor, I think, is the Velocity Suite. How do you expect to use that product?
So the majority of the velocity suite solutions for us is really going to be automation. So if you think of things, front of the house, back of the house. So really where the velocity suite we see a lot of value in is our back end processes, our AP automation, accounts receivable automation. We're looking at doing some invoice processing capabilities with them where we can auto accept an invoice from a supplier, validate it, auto pay it, and then also do some intelligent search on it. whether it's, hey, is there a late fee on there, or is there a, early payment term options, things we might have missed in terms of just maximizing, margins, at a vendor by vendor. So we're looking at leveraging that really around the AP processing. And then we're also looking to automate a lot of the back end process. We have some disparate automation tools that'll do, traditional screen bots like screen scraping, replacing mouse clicks and things of that nature. Our goal is to use a lot of the Velocity Suite around some of their RPA tools and some of their Gen AI tools to not just, do screen scraping and replace screens, but really get into advanced functionalities, right? If there's a process, through process mining, we can look and say, hey, to return a product, it takes these 9 steps. How many of them can we automate, right? Can we use AI? Can we use RPA? What tools exist in the Velocity Suite that allows us to turn that into, I call it the magic button. People get mad at me when I say that, but hey, if I can turn returns into, I click a button and a bunch of processes run and maybe I only have to check on it, that's value, right? Because now we're not hiring people. As we grow and the organization grows, these folks have the institutional knowledge. They're going to catch the errors. They're going to keep the AI model honest, but yet be more efficient in how they do it. So instead of handling, we do 40,000 invoices a month. It'd be really great to be able to scale up to 45,000, 50,000 using technology and having people that we have here already just oversee it and make sure that it's doing the right things. We're never going to move away from that human oversight element, at least not in the short term. So it's really going to help us drive scale. And a lot of it is geared towards the back end side of the house. Again, I said, finance, accounting, order processing, order management, APAR, returns, collections, credit, all of those type of functions.
I think I'd like to jump ahead to my question about trust because you kind of alluded to it just now. Have there been any challenges in getting users to actually trust that the AI is producing good results?
Yeah, especially on the pricing widget, right? So we have a lot of seasoned inside salespeople that have been servicing long standing customers, and we're challenging that relationship. So that's always going to create a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of, I know my customer. Okay, you probably do. And I guarantee you know them better than I do. And I'm the technology guy behind the scenes, and that's fair. But we're starting to see with the adoption of these technologies that we're not harming their business, right? The big concern on the sales side is the organization is going to force a level of change through technology that's going to hurt their business, right? We always train salespeople to think of this is your business, right? You sell to your customers, and we're here to support you. So there's always this concern that we're going to push them in an avenue where it's going to harm the relationships that they have with their existing customers or new customers they're trying to get. The adoption is a little bit of a snowball effect. We had folks that early on dead set against it, and then they start looking around and they see that their peers are speaking of it highly. Hey, this is working. Hey, margin went up. And, you start hearing those conversations, and then the adoption starts to come from that. But yeah, there's always this concern that as we apply technology, that the sales teams are going to, feel that we're putting their relationships at risk, at best case at risk, worst case actually at harm where it affects revenue. But we started off with a small group of early adopters. We have some very tech savvy folks where we saw a lot of value as new people to the organization, right? Looking for guidance on how to price for a particular customer, looking for that assistance. So they start repeating and going to the team meetings talking about, oh, I'm using it and it's working well. And I sold this deal and I won this deal. And then the other folks start getting some interest and go, oh, so I can do this quicker and I'm still going to make the sales that I need to make. Then you start getting that trust but it's like one win gets you another win, which gives you an opportunity for the third win. And that's the evolution that we're going through.
So, what would you say was the biggest challenge in getting all of this going?
I think the biggest challenge, there are two real issues. One, Turtle needed to not, we tried to influence the solution heavily in the beginning. I mentioned it before. We're salespeople. We know the business. We're a 100-year-old organization, nearly $1 billion, right? We've been, by all measures, a very successful organization, and we know how we got here. And now we take our data, we hand it somebody, and they're saying, you should be doing this differently. And I think of a couple times where we went through the first iterations with the Infor team, specifically the data scientists who were looking at product, looking at making some early recommendations about product and saying, hey, we see this product and this product, and grouping them together in a way that we would never group them together. And a few times the business folks were kind of going through the UAT side of it, say, no, those products don't go together. They're not equal. You can't price them the same way. And, trying to just our mindset's right. And, we needed to be patient, and Infor did a great job of pushing back and saying, let us get through the exercise. And it really helped us dispel, right? You can't control the narrative as much as you want. Everything that you think about your organization is true, but there's other factors that you don't look at because that's just the organization never looked at it. So you really got to get out of your own head. And, I'm outside of Philadelphia, so the phrase trust the process is probably not the best phrase to say, but there is some level of trust the process with this. You got to open up to the partner and let them tell you some things that may be uncomfortable to hear or counter to how you would make the same determinations, and trust the process. And, that was the biggest challenge. And then the second challenge really on the other side was articulating to Infor our business and what's important to us. So, each of us had a little bit of learnings to go through to figure out each other and what our data means to us, and then us trusting them, interpreting our data and telling us it might actually mean something different to you if you look at it this way.
Is there anything you would do differently now that you have the benefit of some hindsight looking back on it?
I guess the easy answer is I would have done it sooner. I think, no, in reality, I think Turtle did it at the right time. I think we took too small of a bite in the beginning. I think some of the things we're looking at now, we're looking at the third project within Infor is a product recommender. And I think that's going to have a much bigger impact on us than, say, the margin tool. I knowing what I know now, I would have been a little bit bolder. I would have gone bigger and a little bit more bolder.
That's a little bit unusual to hear, because usually people say we tried to do too much.
Well, we did. So we tried to do too much, and then we partnered with Infor, and we're like, okay, we failed at doing too much. Let's give Infor a small project, and they nailed it. And we're like, huh. So they were able to accomplish what we weren't able to accomplish. So yeah, it is a peaks and valleys here, right? So a roller coaster ride. But yeah, I would have gone a little bit bigger, a little bit bolder.
So why do you think this worked out so well? Do you have any thoughts about what the key ingredients were to the success of all this?
I think one of the key things that I mentioned earlier was we know our organization very well, right? We've got a salesperson that's been here, I think it's 45 years, right? So Turtle's a phenomenal place. Once you start your career here, you generally end your career here. People stick around, and that's huge, right? That's a testament to the culture, a testament to the company. But the flip side of it is you're missing a lot of insight, a lot of intel from the outside world. So I think, one of the things that made it work is the ability to see, other folks give us feedback in terms of how we should function and what we should do and how we should do and challenge our conventions.
David, this has been a very interesting story to hear. I thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Enterprise Apps Unpacked, where we give the real story on the software that runs your business. To learn more about business applications, explore our content on searcherp.com. Find us on YouTube at our channel, Eye on Tech. Subscribe to our podcast to receive the latest episodes as they drop. And if you liked what you heard today, give us a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Until next time.
Podcast programming and promotion by Kelsey Waddell. Music supplied by DP via Getty Images. This is an Informa Tech Target production.